"Hi, Mrs. Burton," I said. She nodded, smiling, and approached my parents. As I pulled out weed, I overheard them talking about the McField's missing son, the Grover's ugly new lawn that was ruining the image of the neighborhood, and Cormac Stanner's brand new car, which had windows so dark you couldn't see inside. "You really should look into joining the Manuscript Book Club. It helped me a lot. Things were so hard after Ben passed away, but I'm so much better now." I had someone to talk to. My life had purpose, she said to my parents in that pleasant motherly voice. "Thanks, Mrs. Burton, we'll give it a thought," my mom said, taking the carrot cake from her. Mrs. Burton was your regular sweet old lady. She used to live with her husband Ben, but he passed away last year. Poor Mrs. Burton was in absolute anguish for the past year, until she appeared to us, spriteful and lively. I thought that she had recovered and found purpose living alone. My phone vibrated. It was my best friend Zoe. I went into our front porch to return her text. My parents didn't want me talking to Zoe. "Damned street rat. Horrible influence on a girl," my dad would often say. We went to the same class from high school until college. She was an orphan, and would frequently get in trouble for all sorts of things: hot wiring a teacher's car and driving it around the school, planting a farting balloon under the teacher's seat, starting food fights, and the list went on. But Zoe was always friendly and protective of me. We became friends after she defended me from a school bully using water balloons. "Bored out of my mind." "Wid?" she texted. "Not much. Doing the garden with my parents." I was texting her and looking at Mrs. Burton, who returned to her house and took out a chair on her front lawn and sat down. She faced the direction of the Grovers, probably musing over how ugly their new lawn was. We lived in a cul-de-sac. There were around 12 families, including ours. We were the kind of neighborhood where most families are wealthy and have a cared-for lawn and 2 kids, normal and boring. Things were going well for my family, at least until that day. Our family was on a road trip. We stopped for a pee break. My mom went into a deep bush while my dad stood behind a large boulder. I was on the front seat, typing away at my phone. Jason, my little brother, was in the back seat looking out of the car. "Megan, look. A fox with strange ear. Look, it's green." I ignored him. A 5-year-old sees all sorts of things. I shouldn't have. I looked up just in time to see him opening the car door and running outside. It happened in the blink of an eye. A truck passed by the road. It didn't stop in time. All I could hear was a loud hissing of the brake pads grinding, and then the skidding sound of tires, and then a loud thud followed by silence. Just like that, my little brother was killed. We were devastated after the accident. My parents didn't blame me, but I did. I should have talked to him, should have looked after him. Instead, I glued my eyes to my phone, talking to Zoe about the latest song by some indie band, and my brother was dead. For weeks, we barely left the house. I sometimes wandered to Jason's room and sat there looking at the paintings that he made on the wall and crying alone. The neighbors were very understanding and gave us plenty of gifts, cakes, and condolences. But we'd trade them all for Jason back in an instant. We weren't the only family with grief. Every single family of our neighborhood lost someone. Mrs. Burton lost her husband. The Grovers lost their daughter. Cormac Stanner lived alone, but his dog got sick and died. Each of us lost someone dear, so the McFields were understandably worried about their missing son. They put up posters, asked for help on the local radio station, had volunteer groups searching for him in the surrounding forests. Then I started noticing something strange. First, only Mrs. Burton would put out a chair on her lawn, facing the Grovers' house. But then, the McFields did the same thing. After that, Cormac Stanner bought an entire recliner on his front porch, facing the same direction. The Smiths followed. The Whitakers installed a porch swing. Every day, in the afternoon, they would go to the same spot and look at the Grovers' house for an hour. Eventually, my family was the only one left not taking part in the strange observation. Soon, everything became even stranger. I started hearing voices in the night. I knew it was not a dream. I heard it coming from the direction of the Grovers. It sounded like some people were chanting in unison. I eventually chalked it up to some kind of new song they were practicing for Christmas and put on my muffler and fell back asleep. Then the visit started. At first, it was only Mrs. Burton. She would come by and leave us the occasional carrot cake, a batch of chocolate chips cookies, or fresh apples from the tree in her backyard. She would talk about how hard it must have been for us, dealing with Jason's death. Then the Smiths come by Wood with fish from their weekend trip, the Grovers with deer meat from their hunt. Even Cormac Stanner visited us with wine, wearing his garish rainbow sweater. They would all tell us how sorry they were about Jason, and then recommend us to take part in the neighborhood book club called The Manuscript. Even my parents saw how weird the whole thing was. They politely declined at first. "Your weirdo neighbors give me the creeps. Can never wrap my head around rich people," Zoe texted me when I told her about it. After the shock of Jason's death faded, something broke in my family. Our dinners were starting to fill with uncomfortable silence, like something was missing. My parents started to argue, then fight. Then after that, there would be no apology. I was afraid of being caught in the middle, so I started eating dinner in my room. That was when I was able to observe that the entire neighborhood, save for our family, started gathering at the Grovers at around 8 inches the evening. I never saw them leaving. Somehow, they would all be up and about as usual the morning after. Then I started to see my neighbors do this weird exercise where they would kneel down on the grass and put their hands together as if holding up a book. Then they would move their hands forward and bow their heads down close to the ground. They would repeat this 3 times before standing up and going about their days as usual. What was awful was that the neighbors' visits were starting to get to my mom. She mentioned joining the book club a few times to my dad. They just seemed like a bunch of weirdos to me. What will reading books do to help us get over Jason? This town's gone crazy enough with news of people hitting their heads, then rumors of shadows killing people. "We best keep to ourselves," he said one evening, and their conversation once again turned into an argument. Every time Mrs. Burton dropped by and Dad wasn't home, my mom would ask her about the book club. She asked whether there was a membership fee or anything special one had to do. Turned out, it was just a normal book club, save for the fact that they only read one book called The Manuscript. Things were bad, but they were tolerable. It wasn't until Mom went behind Dad's back to attend a reading session of the book club that everything turned out horrible. That morning, my dad said he had some business to take care of in town and wouldn't be back till the evening. Mrs. Burton came by and talked about the book club again. "You really should think about it, dear. We're having a reading session today. Would you care to join us, just for 15 minutes? My mom hesitated, then nodded her head. 15 minutes turned out to be 2 hours, and when my dad was home early, she was still in the Grover's house, taking part in the little book club. He called her phone. She didn't pick up. He ran around like a madman around the neighborhood looking for her, with me following. And when we saw her through the glass panels of the Grovers, I guess something inside him snapped. He practically dragged her out of their house, and my dad was generally a gentle person. He told her that he would not have his wife take part in some crazy club, that it sounded just like a religious cult. "At least they listened to me, you controlling and abusive asshole. When was the last time you did that?" she screamed to his face. I didn't know whose side to take. They were both right. I was torn and felt horrible, so I ran to my room and called Zoe. "I'm really sorry you had to go through that. One of the reasons why I'm glad to be an orphan sometimes. No family drama," she said. Things started to go downhill. My parents were no longer eating in the same room. My mom ignored my dad and went to the book club more regularly. She started coming home later and later. Sometimes, I wouldn't even see her the entire evening. My dad started to spend more and more time in his office. Sometimes he didn't even come home. I felt ignored and lonelier than ever. I felt like I was some sort of obstacle to prevent them from a divorce and just ending the miserable pain that was their failing marriage. I spent most of my time cooped up in my room. For once, I was glad that the new college semester was coming. It would mean time in the city and away from all of this. In my neighborhood, the strangeness was just ramping up. Mrs. Burton used to be a gentle and caring old lady. But every time I passed by her, she would shoot me this stare, as if I was some sort of street hooker. She wasn't the only one. The Grovers would also give me strange looks whenever I walked outside their house. Cormac Stanner once looked ready to hunt me down. It wasn't just me. My dad also got the same treatment. We somehow became enemies of the neighborhood. That night, I packed my things and was ready to head to college early. I figured I would spend a couple of days at the dorm reading books. Anything to escape from the hellhole I was in. I asked Zoe to drop by my house. I'd wanted her to sleep over before going to the college with me in the morning. My parents didn't care anymore. My dad said nothing, and my mom immediately went to the Grover's house after dinner. Zoe and I went to our room and chatted till it was night. I didn't see my mom get back home until 10 p.m. From my window on the second floor, I could see nervousness on her face, but didn't think much of it. Downstairs, it seemed my parents had started to make up because I could hear music and the faint voice of my mom telling my dad that they should get a drink. I was relieved and went to sleep. Zoe woke me that night. She pressed a finger to her lips and pointed me to the window. I looked at the clock. It was 3 amperes. There were several people in dark robes, and they were lining up to enter my house. I heard our front door being opened, then the creaking sounds of footsteps over old woods. I was scared out of my mind. I thought they were burglars, and took out my phone to call 911. Zoe put her ears to the door of my room, and after a moment, her eyes widened. She rushed back to bed and told me to pretend I'm sleeping. I shut my eyes as hard as I could and tried my best to not move. But my heart was jumping inside my chest. She's sleeping. I heard a male voice. It seemed to be Henry Grover. We'll come back for her. This time was a female voice. It sounded a lot like Kathy McField. And with that, they walked out of our bedroom. We both waited for what seemed like forever, until Zoe slowly got up and peeked outside the window. "Look, they're taking someone," she said and gestured outside. My blood froze the moment I caught eye of who they were taking. It was my dad. He looked like he was still asleep while being carried by his arms and legs. "What the hell is wrong with rich people?" Zoe whispered. "We have to follow them," I said, putting on my hoodie and taking my wallet and phone with me as a habit. We took slow and small steps to not creak the stairs. I looked at my mom's bed. It was empty. We crept downstairs and outside, just as one of the robed people closed the door to the Grovers' house. We looked around for a moment and then crouched slowly to the Grovers. We had to know what they were doing, but I couldn't come up with anything. Just then, light lit up from the basement. I suddenly recalled that the Grovers' basement had a window. Me and Zoe got to it, making sure to stay hidden from view and only peeking in. In the middle of the basement was a circle of people. They were all facing an altar, on top of which was a closed notebook with a brown leather cover. Then, 2 men carried my dad to the middle of the circle. "We are the children of the manuscript, and the manuscript is our lifeblood," the robed people said in unison 3 times. My hand trembled, sweats dotting my fingers. Then, a small and familiar figure stepped forward, then removed their robe, and I had to put my hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. It was my mom. "We offer this child to the manuscript, so that his eyes may be opened," she said and took out a knife. "Oh my God, she's going to kill your dad. Call the cops, call them now," Zoe hissed. I took my phone out of my pocket, but my hand was too sweaty, and the phone wouldn't recognize my fingerprint or face in the darkness. All the meanwhile, my eyes were glued to the window. The 2 men were holding up my dad now. My mom was approaching him with the knife. I thought about screaming out loud to stop them, but something was holding me back. She raised knife. My eyes burned from not blinking. Then she took my dad's hand and made a small cut on his index finger. "We offer this child to the manuscript so that his eyes may be opened. His blood will be the price for initiation," she said, and opened the book on the altar and held his hand over it. Blood dripped from his finger to the notebook and disappeared. Then my dad's head jerked up, his eyes opened wide. A green jet of light entered from the book to his eyes. Then he drooped back down. At this point, I was practically frantic. Zoe put her hand over my mouth and shook her head. She pointed to a corner in the room. My heart sank. There was a shotgun, and next to it, a cage that holds a fox with a clipped ear that was painted bright green. At that moment, I felt something in the air, like being watched from behind. Then I heard the footsteps. "Now what do we have here, peeping Toms?" a voice called out to us. I was startled. The people in the basement also heard it. Their eyes darted up to where we were standing in unison. I turned around. It was Cormac Stanner. "We were saving this as a present for you, Megan. It seemed you have found your way to us anyway. Ready to accept the blessing of the manuscript?" he asked. His face began to contort into a weird smile, and his eyes opened wide. "Run!" Zoe screamed. I bolted, but his hands caught me. I struggled and thrashed to no effect. Then Zoe came back and started picking up rocks on the ground and threw them in his face, making loud thuds. "It's Megan we want. You can scurry off now," he said, shrugging off her attacks like they were nothing. Desperate, I began punching him in the face. That was when I realized his smile never left, and his eyes never blinked. I was absolutely freaked out. Then Zoe jumped in front of him and kicked him square in the balls. Cormac Stanner dropped to the ground, his hands holding his crotch, but still smiling, and his eyes would not blink. Then we heard a click. The Grovers' front door opened, and light streamed out. More than a dozen people spilled out and removed their robe. Henry and Martha Grover, Kathy and Abel McField, Gavin and Chloe Smith, Alexander and Lydia Whitaker, many others, and even Mrs. Burton, and finally, my mom and dad. They looked at us. Then their faces warped into a smile that was way too wide, their eyes opened and unblinking. There was a period of silence. The air reeked of wet grass and rot. "I saw the truth in the manuscript, honey. It helped me move on. It would help you too," my mom said before her mouth turned into a smile again. "That's right, honey. I was blind, but now my eyes are open. The manuscript can do the same to you," my dad said. Zoe and I were backing up slowly as the row of people advanced. Slowly, their hands moved in front of them and made a motion as if to hold a book. We turned and ran. They ran after us, their legs running but their arms still making the book-reading motion and the smiles never leaving their faces. Zoe pointed at Cormac Stanner's car, and we rushed to it. She took out a screwdriver and did something with the door. The sounds of shoes rapping on the concrete were very close now. I was screaming at the top of my lung for her to hurry up. She opened the car door, and we rushed in just as hands almost grabbed my feet. We held the car door closed, while the group of people stood all around it. Zoe ducked down the driver's seat and brought out some wires. "I'm gonna hot wire this thing. Ever drove a car?" she asked me. Kinda," I stammered, my mind blank. The people were surrounding the car now. Zoe successfully primed the car and the engine started. We switched seats, and I looked up to see that my parents were standing in front of the car. "There's no point running, honey," they told me, their unblinking eyes boring a straight hole to my soul. Zoe looked to me. Our hands found each other. "Shit, looks like no way out," she said. "What the hell do we do?" I asked her. "Hey Megan, can I borrow your hoodie?" Always wanted to wear it. Figured I'd want to wear it once before they caught us. I thought it was a strange request, but listened anyway. I took my hoodie and gave it to her. She put it on and gave me a look, tears in her eyes. "Love you more than anything. Come back to save me, okay? Best friends forever," she said, before pulling the hood down her face and rushing out of the car through the line of people. They ran after her. I wanted to open the car door, but something inside me screamed not to. I gave her a tearful look goodbye and slammed on the gas pedal. The car darted away from the neighborhood, away from my childhood, from my parents' failing marriage, from the manuscript, and from Zoe. That was 3 weeks ago. I've been running ever since. New town, new place to crash every few days. Never the same place twice. I slept in charity homes and ate their meals. I changed my SIM card. I thought I was safe. Then today, the manager at my latest charity home delivered a speech. "We're starting a new book club to help those in mental pain. We'll be reading the manuscript," he said, his smile too wide. My hair stood on its end,